Morning everybody. Today I'm going to climb Mount Tunbubudla, which is also known as the Twins up here in the Glasshouse Mountains. Off we go. So if you're ever coming up this way, there's a track that comes in off Eaton's Road, which is this one here. And pretty much you just keep taking right-hand turns down into here, and this is going to take us up to the saddle up there between the two mountains. Sorry for my dodgy camera skills, but there's the two mountains. The saddle in between, and this is the track we're going up. So it's a bit of a rock scramble as I'm pulling some cobwebs, spider's webs out of my mouth. Not really great for running, but we're going to roll an ankle. Realised the path is blocked up there. I'm going to take a bit of a detour. Alright, so I've reached the point of the saddle. I'm going to go up this one here, which is the East Peak. It's a less spectacular view apparently than the West Peak, so I'm going to do the harder one with a less spectacular view first, then I'll finish with the climax at the end. So at the moment I'm operating purely on my spidey senses, which has resulted in me possibly going the wrong way. I don't actually have a map, so I'm just pretty much relying on my old school like bat navigation, which usually gets me out of trouble, but today I think I've just run about 500 yards down the wrong track. Not an overly obvious path. There are a few difficult patches where the rocks are loose, blah blah blah, there's great views at the top. Well, I'm not going up, I seem to be going down, so I'm going to go back up this path and go bush bashing. Alright, so at this point I'm back at the saddle. And I've been told there is not an overly obvious path leading up to the summit. I may be going in the wrong direction. We'll see. So after about 5 minutes of bush bashing, I seem to have found this less than obvious path, which I'm hoping takes me up to the summit. So that's not a bad view. I'm about halfway up the eastern summit. It's around about, I don't know, 6 AM. So you've got the sun just starting to shine on the mountain there. It's quite steep down there. Wouldn't want to be doing it in the wet. I'm going to do a video when I get to the top, and I'm going to do a video of actually walking down because I've taken a few wrong turns and I've made it way harder for myself than what it should have been. So when you get to here, it does turn pretty steep. So try and remember this point, because this is the point where you're going to start to go uphill. That's definitely fallen over. Definitely a much tougher climb than what I thought. Not the toughest I've ever had, but it's a good one. I reckon your level of fitness has got to be pretty good. Pretty much if you can't do a 5k park run, I think you'll struggle up here. Try not to damage any of the grass trees here. It's The old heart rate's definitely going up. I'm just coming up now to the summit. It's a very pretty morning. There's no real view up here, I've been warned. That's not a bad view looking out to the southwest over the farmland. Yeah, so this is the eastern summit of Tumbubudla. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. There's a lot of B's and a lot of D's in Tumbubudla. Oh, hang on, there's a bit of a clearing up here. They might call that the summit. There's a lot of spider's webs. Love getting the old spider's webs in the mouth as you're about to take a big deep breath. So there we are. The eastern summit of Tumbubudla. Alright, so fast forward from when I was at the car to the top of Tumbubudla's eastern summit. I got lost. I'm quite sweaty, had to do a bit of bush bashing. The directions did say that there was a vague track, and it was pretty vague. I lost it for the first quarter of the way up here, then I found it. Pretty much then you lose it for the 3/4 of the way up here, and then you'll find it again when you're on the summit. So there's pretty much one path in, and we're going to follow that path all the way back down. So if you are going to climb this summit, you're going to have to run this video in reverse. Okay, about 150 metres across the top of the summit, you're going to reach a sort of very undefined path, which looks a lot like this. There is no tree line on Tumbubudla. There's just a lot of grass trees, and it gets steeper and rockier. Pretty much this path goes straight down to the saddle in line with that western summit. There is some pink ribbons on some trees. I passed about 4 or 5. I don't know, this is 2020, what are we, 2022, January. You could be watching this video in 3 years' time. Those pink ribbons might not be there. It's not very well defined. So you can see the western peak over there. We're about a quarter of the way down. You can see there's a few of these pink ribbons on the path to know that we're going the correct route. So on the way, look for these marker ribbons. Don't go down that way like I just did. This is the point where you've got to turn that way to go back down. Just come off the sort of the steeper section of that first peak, and it was definitely harder coming down than what it was going up. It's a real hard burner on the way up, but it's definitely a neat burner on the way down. It's quite slippery. Had a fair bit of rain, so some of the rocks were quite loose. So I will show you when we get to the actual saddle junction which path to take up, because I actually don't know yet, because I had to bush bash to find it. Alright guys, so we're just back at the saddle junction now, and this path is actually quite obvious. I've come up from the car that way. That's the actual saddle junction here, and pretty much it's the path that goes right. And I ended up going straight ahead that way before and got lost. And this is the saddle junction, and that's the path, quite an obvious path there, going up to the western peak. So I'm going to go up that one now. So the path up the west summit is definitely much more well worn, but they pack a punch for two little hills. They are steep coming up from this saddle, so it's a good workout. And that's where I've just come from. So it's always a bit of a conundrum when you hit the rock face like this. Do I go left or do I go right? I think I'm going to go left. So my spidey tingles were correct. You go left at the rock face. We're sort of skirting the southern side of the peak now. Looking back towards Brisbane. There's the eastern peak. So there is a definite path up here. You just got to be patient in finding it. So I'm just coming up to the summit now of the western peak. It's a much more pleasant climb than the eastern peak, except for two things. The first is if you come early in the morning, you're pretty much guaranteed of inhaling at least several dozen spiders' webs. And secondly, the sun over there in the east is now bearing down on the eastern face of the western summit here, and it is middle of January. That's a good view there of Mount Tibbergargan over there, looking back at the east peak of Tumbubudla, and over there is Cunnaran and Beerburrum over in the distance there. When you're on top of Mount Beerburrum, these two little mountains just look like tiny little hills, but like I said before, they're a couple of good little mountains. I'm about halfway down now. Quite a lot of loose rocks. Like I'm falling on one now. And yeah, it's definitely something that you don't want to take for granted. It's a good climb, and it's definitely climbable from someone with a fairly moderate level of fitness. It's the kind of descent where things could go horribly wrong if you weren't patient and you weren't careful. Whoa! It's butter. Coming back down into the saddle junction now. Pretty much the first half of this summit is rocks similar to this, but a little bit more steeper. Alright, so just a reminder, once you get to the saddle, that there to the left is the western summit, and if you come back down here, you go slightly about 10 yards to the south, and then you turn east, and that path up there will take you to the eastern summit. There's quite a bit of rain around here. So, just running back towards my car now where it's parked. Hopefully it's still in one piece. It is in the middle of nowhere, but that was a good day out. It's about 7:30 in the morning, and I've done just on 7 k's actual distance travelled. I definitely would recommend taking a fair bit of water on this trip, and do it early in the morning or in winter, because it's nice and warm out there. Oh, and have a look at this. Best part about coming up the Glasshouse Mountains. Cold white cheese.